prince weds massive muscle queen for protection, but the shocking truth will haunt him forever. In the heart of the kingdom, rumors buzzed louder than the clanging church bells. Whispers of a wedding. A prince marrying a giant of a woman, a muscle queen like no other. The townsfolk couldn't help but imagine the scene. The delicate prince, in all his royal finery, standing beside his bride, whose arms boasted biceps like tree trunks. They said she was fierce, a guardian built like tanks, flawless yet intimidating. If ever there was a fortress, she was it. Yet, beyond those powerful muscles lay a mystery cloaked in shadows and danger. When the day finally arrived, the air crackled with anticipation. A packed square overflowed with eager eyes. There she stood, fully adorned in a gown that shimmered like scales under the sun. And once she smiled, powerful and beautiful, the crowd gasped. A mixture of awe and apprehension washed over them. Did they comprehend the weight she carried? The prince, visibly shaken yet smitten, couldn't seem to take his eyes off her. A flicker of doubt passed through him, a shiver racing down his spine as he wondered what darkness accompanied such strength. As they exchanged vows, unyielding winds howled, signaling an unease that made many fight to keep still. Amidst the jubilation, strange events rippled through the crowd. A chill hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. The trumpet blared a triumphant note, but shadows flitted across the delighted faces. The townsfolk murmured among themselves, eyes wide. Is he truly safe? One voice quivered. What if she turns on him? Another responded, incredulous. Even the jests of jesters faltered under the looming anxiety. Something wasn't right. Then came the moment the new couple paused for their first dance. The prince's heart raced, pounding in rhythm with the swirling crowd. But just as they matched their movements in quiet grace, her expression shifted to one of cold steel. The music faded. Panic rippled through the audience. What was she hiding? What secrets lurked beneath that enormous exterior? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension hung suspended as the crowd watched, mouths agape. Then, she whispered something just for him, something so chilling it froze the blood in his veins. Whatever she spoke pulled the very ground from beneath his feet. But just as quickly, a wicked smile broke her stern facade. The prince's confusion morphed into raw panic, and the crowd caught their breaths, holding on to something they could barely name. What had he stumbled into? What were the true ramifications of marrying the muscle queen? The wedding day had become an enigma, a puzzle with pieces that seemed to change shape right before their eyes. What truth lay just beyond the veil, poised to shatter everything he thought he knew? The music came to an abrupt stop, leaving a deafening silence that pressed against the ears of the crowd. The prince's heart raced as he struggled to interpret his bride's cold, piercing gaze. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment, for the sense of dread that gripped him as words slipped from her lips like poison. I am not who you think I am, she had whispered, her voice low and steady, sending chills cascading down his spine. With her brief confession, the lush garden around them faded away. The vibrant flowers lost their color. The joyous laughter of guests dulled to whispers of concern. The prince barely registered the looks of disbelief exchanged among the townsfolk, their excitement hollowed out by a creeping dread. What do you mean? He managed to stutter, his voice barely cutting through the murky air. A knot formed in his throat as she leaned in even closer, a conspiratorial smile now stretching across her imposing features. Your kingdom is not the only one that needs guarding. There are forces at play, secrets buried in blood. Her words slithered through the air like mist, leaving behind confusion and fear. The prince felt his chest tighten, each breath heavier than the last. as she began to twirl, drawing him into her embrace. He couldn't shake the feeling of spinning into a dark abyss, unaware of what awaited. The onlookers had taken a single step back, an unspoken agreement sealing their lips to an eerie stillness. Whatever fabric of loyalty and love had been sewn into this union seemed to unravel in those moments. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the edge of the crowd. Eyes darted, and gasps erupted as a cloaked figure stumbled into the square, clutching a twisted staff. It was an old woman, her face etched with deep lines of worry, wild gray hair framing her frantic expression. "The blood moon rises," she shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. "The prophecy. It awakens." With every word, waves of anxiety washed over the guests as they turned their attention toward her. The prince felt as though a cold hand gripped his heart. The presence of the giant woman beside him grew heavy, like the smothering heat before a storm. "What does she mean?" he asked, desperation framing his voice. His muscles tensed in reaction to the chaos, readying himself for a confrontation he didn't understand. "The blood moon calls forth truths, monsters bound by ancient whispers," the elderly woman replied, pointing a trembling finger at the Muscle Queen. "She is not merely your bride." The prince's world tilted, his eyes locked onto the woman he loved, confusion twisting into stark reality. The crowd murmured, horror magnetizing their gazes. Could it be? Were there deeper connections, hidden affiliations tied to the very foundation of his kingdom? "I will protect you," she asserted, her tone quiet but insistent, arms flexing with confidence. But it was no comfort. The prince could see in her eyes the struggle between the fierce protector and something much darker lying in wait, an unquenched thirst for power that could only spring from shadowy motives. Suddenly, above the noise, something changed. A hush fell over the crowd as the blood moon began to rise, casting crimson shadows that slithered over the square like a haunting specter. The air thickened with tension. Hearts pounded like drums, and the sense of impending reckoning loomed large. "What have I done?" the prince thought, teetering between love and fright. As the moon reached its apex, a low rumble filled the earth, vibrating beneath their feet. The prince locked eyes with his bride once more. But this time, something had shifted, the stakes had been raised, and he felt the weight of destiny pressing down hard. In that moment, he knew. The truth was not merely haunting him. It was just beginning. What would unfold in the shadow of the blood moon? As the massive Muscle Queen stood tall and proud beside him, the question spiraled, growing roots deep in his mind. What fate did he, and his kingdom, really share with his bride? And what dark forces awaited them? Both. The crowd partook in the silence around them as the world held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash between love and secrets left unspoken. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the ominous rumble resonating like a heartbeat echoing through the square. The crimson glow of the blood moon bathed everything in a dreary light, making shadows dance in wicked ways. Fear enveloped the crowd as murmurs grew, spiraling into a chaotic symphony of panic. "What is happening?" the prince shouted, his voice barely piercing the cloud of confusion. He gripped his bride's arm, desperate for some sign, some truth that lay beyond the stark facade she wore. But her eyes held secrets he could not fathom. "I need you to trust me," she whispered fiercely, her tone now urgent and commanding. The words cut through the chaos, moments of stillness wrapping between them amidst the frantic crowd. The old woman stepped forth, waving her staff defiantly. "The blood moon exposes all," she hollered. "You may think you hold the power, but this night, it will reveal your true selves." Crowd members began to shuffle, uncertainty creeping in as old fears resurfaced. Glances flickered between the prince and the Muscle Queen, speculation hanging thick in the air. A collective anxiety surged, drawing tighter with each beat of the blood moon's rise. "Define true selves," the prince shot back, irritation and fear mixing into a boiling pot. "What are we doing here?" The elder's face twisted in reverence to the celestial awakening above. "This marriage is built on deception. Blood binds them both. Do not ignore the signs." With that proclamation, the prince's heart lurched. Was she suggesting that his bride was tied not just to him, but to something darker? Shadows moved in the corners of his mind, teasing his thoughts with hints of betrayal and implications of past sins. He could feel the air growing denser, suffocating him. "I will uncover the truth," he declared defiantly, even as the question clawed at him. Was he brave, or merely a fool chasing shadows? With a swift turn, the prince scrutinized his bride. Her prideful stance now seemed defensive, a fortress formed but riddled with cracks. "What are you hiding? Tell me," he demanded, his voice rising above the crowd's din. "I am a guardian," she replied, a hint of desperation weaving through her words. "But my purpose intertwines with darkness, one that protects you from the true threat." Vocal panic erupted in the crowd, spectators crying out as some clutched their children, and others turned their backs on the couple. What threat? From whom? The air crackled with tension like the moments before a strike of lightning. "I cannot explain," she replied, the tension in her words crumbling quickly, revealing her vulnerability. "But a curse has been laid, one that binds my people and yours to a fateful destiny." A chilling silence fell, punctuated only by the faint rustle of leaves. The prince took a step back, attempting to digest this monumental shift. His thoughts raced, spiraling, as the crescent shadows around them expanded. The moment the moon broke fully free of the clouds, a flash in the distance clashed through the growing darkness. Wings flapped violently as nightmarish silhouettes emerged from the shadows, revealing creatures of tar-like gloom, mouths agape with a lust for chaos. The blood moon did not just reveal secrets, it birthed nightmares. "Get behind me," the prince shouted, instinctively positioning himself in front of his bride. Yet, as they faced the approaching terror, the muscle queen stepped forward, determination firing in her veins, muscles coiling with potent energy. "I will face them," she declared, a warrior readying for battle, but the prince's heart thudded with worry. In that moment of resolve, everything shifted. He realized this night was more than about love or betrayal. It was a battle for survival against a force none expected. His pulse quickened, deep dread coiling in his gut as he prepared for the conflict barreling toward them. What would hide in the shadows? What were they really up against? In his gut, he felt it. An unshakable certainty that everything had changed as the first creature lunged forward, jaws snapping in desperation. The prince realized the true battle had only just begun. The first creature lunged with a vicious snarl, its grotesque features twisted in a blend of horror and rage. The prince barely had time to react. Instinct kicked in, and he shoved his bride aside to intercept the attacking monstrosity. Heart racing, he swung his arm, but his fist met only air as the creature zipped past him, targeting the crowd instead. Cries of terror erupted as chaos spiraled. The crowd surged backward, desperate to escape the nightmarish beings that emerged from the shadows. As the unexpectedly agile creature sank its teeth into the flesh of an unfortunate villager, a fierce shout rang out. "Fight!" shouted the muscle queen, her voice a clarion call above the panic. As she lunged forward, muscles rippling beneath her armor like a coiling serpent ready to strike. She tackled the first creature, their forms colliding with a brutal crunch. The prince watched in awe, the sheer power radiating from her shimmering with determination. But their reprieve was short-lived. More creatures clawed their way into the square, each one more terrifying than the last, beady eyes glinting, talons sharp, dripping with the remnants of those they had already claimed. The prince's heart hammered against his chest as reality crashed down on him. This was no mere battle. It was a reckoning. "No!" he shouted again, panic flaring as he saw another creature advancing toward the woman he loved. "Stay close. We can't separate." She turned to him, and in her eyes he caught a glimpse of fear that mirrored his own. "We can't be afraid. We have to hold them back." Desperation twisted in the pit of his stomach, urging him to fight alongside her. With a cautious step forward, he picked up a discarded sword from the ground, its blade heavy in his hand, but comforting. The chaos was deafening, a cacophony of screams interspersed with sickening growls. Yet their shared resolve sparked a flicker of hope. The bitter air was thick with smell, the iron tang of blood mixing with the earthy scent of the damp ground. As the creatures closed in, the Muscle Queen grabbed his arm, and together they faced a throng of dark shadows, their mouths twisting into grotesque smiles. "What do they want?" he gasped, heart racing. "Chaos," she replied fiercely. "They feed on fear, on the uncertainty of our souls. If we give in, they will take everything." With that grim understanding blazing through him, the prince felt a surge of defiance. He stepped forward beside her, readying himself for the confrontation. Every muscle in his body screamed for action. And then, they pounced. The pair fought like a thunderstorm, a relentless force striking out against the wave of creatures. Each swing of the sword felt heavy and powerful, every echo of the grunts and growls an urgent reminder of what was at stake. Together, the Muscle Queen called out through gritted teeth, her blows flying with precision, each one landing with a decisive crunch. The prince joined her, their movements linking like a carefully choreographed dance of survival. But as one creature fell, two more emerged. The onslaught was unrelenting, and even their combined strength began to wane. Just then, a flicker of movement caught the princess eye. A larger figure, cloaked in darkness, loomed at the edge of the battle. A new fear pooled in his belly. "What is that?" he shouted, breathing hard as it stepped into the moonlight. It was unlike the others, tall and sinewy, with eyes that glowed like embers, full of malice and command. "A leader," she breathed, horror creeping into her voice. "We need to finish this before it joins the fray." In the turmoil, a chilling realization washed over him. This creature was more than an adversary. It was the embodiment of the darkest secrets that bound their fates together. The battle was far from over, and something sinister was gaining strength, lurking at the periphery and waiting for a moment of weakness. What other horrors awaited them in this nightmare? The prince had no answers. All he knew was that they needed to fight and fast. The very truth that united their fates was tangled in this darkness, and he clenched his teeth, knowing that revealing it meant they might strip away the last of their defenses with resolve. He glared into the heart of the chaos before him. The tide was turning, but in what direction? Would they rise, or would the darkness claim them both? The prince felt the weight of the sword as he gripped it tighter, an anchor in the swirling storm of terror that surrounded him. The Muscle Queen moved like lightning, her every strike mesmerizing yet terrifying. She danced in the chaos, muscles flexing, a true warrior against the nightmarish horde. "Keep your eyes sharp," she shouted, bringing down her sword with a resounding thud that echoed in the chaos. "We have to draw them out." He nodded even as doubt crept in. But what could they do against a leader so ominous? The glowing eyes fixed upon him sent a chill through his marrow. If that thing joined the attack, they'd be overwhelmed in seconds. A bellowing roar shook the ground as one of the creatures fell, the Muscle Queen's blow delivering a deadly strike. The moment tasted sweet, the crowd's screams dying momentarily into applauding silence. But it was shattered as a pack of creatures, drawn by the scent of blood, barreled in from the sides, snarling and snapping. "No!" The prince lunged forward, but a second creature caught him by surprise, its claws ripping across his arm. Pain shot through his body, sharp and fierce. He staggered back, vision blurring, clutching the wound. Blood oozed between his fingers, hot and thick, the warmth of life slipping away. "Stay focused," the Muscle Queen urged, her voice fierce and hard as iron. She had an unyielding way about her, a remarkable magnetism. He couldn't afford to crumble now. There was no room for weakness, not with her fighting beside him. "Let them come," he shouted, his voice a rallying cry. The sword in his hand felt lighter now, infused with purpose. This was no longer just about survival. It was about standing together, about pushing back against the tide of terror. They surged forward like two flames against a raging storm, clashing and cleaving their way this way and that. Every monster that fell seemed to drain more darkness from the environment. But for each creature they dispatched, more poured in, like shadows spilling forth from a broken wellspring. "Look out," she called, pushing him aside as another creature attacked, its maw wide and dripping. She took the hit using her body as a shield, absorbing its ferocity. A crunch of ice broke in his heart as he watched her resilience. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for him too. Her eyes met his as she fired back, edge of her sword glittering in the dim moonlight, a fierce glint of determination lighting her face. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," he shouted, breathless, adrenaline surging. "Then fight." With renewed vigor, he followed her lead, their synergy becoming a beacon. The gruesome leader stood in the shadows, pulsating with an eldritch energy, but they wouldn't bow to it, not today. The prince felt the embers of courage ignite behind the veil of fear. Then suddenly, a gut-wrenching roar erupted, the massive figure stepping into the fight with unbridled rage. It lunged. The prince and the muscle queen barely dodged in time, rolling to the side as the creature's claws slashed the air with a hideous shriek that it was stronger, faster, and more intelligent than the others. This was no mindless beast. It could anticipate and react, and right now, it had them in its sights. "Behind you!" she cried, but it was echoing too late in one swift, brutal motion. It lunged, its primal howl resonating through the square. The prince felt the ground tremble as he scrambled to defend, heart racing like wild horses trampling through his chest. But the creature had one target in mind, and it wasn't him. Will it claim her as its prize? The thought sliced through him like ice. Would he watch helplessly as it took away everything? Time froze, and the question lingered in the air. Was this the moment they had feared, or could they seize their destiny in the face of utter chaos? With a sudden, fierce determination, he lunged forward, ready to risk it all. They had to defeat this monster together. What dark revelation awaited them at the heart of this battle? The prince had no answers, but he couldn't lose his love to the clutches of darkness, no matter the cost. The prince barely had time to connect the dots in his mind before chaos consumed the square. The giant creature, with its glistening fangs and massive claws, roared again, sending shockwaves through the crowd. Panic surged, primal and visceral, as people stumbled, crying out in terror. The prince fixed his gaze on the beast, determination flooding his veins like fire. "Together!" he shouted, feeling the heft of the sword settle back into place in his grip, transforming his fear into something sharper, more dangerous. The muscle queen, still standing defiant despite the jaws of chaos snapping around them, locked eyes with him. She raised her sword high, its blade catching the flickering light of the torches lining the square. With a fierce battle cry, she closed the distance to the creature before he even had a moment to think. He watched as she danced through the air, every movement fluid, powerful. Each clash of their weapons echoed like a thunderclap, and the prince was drawn into her rhythm, matching her strikes and feints, the bond between them becoming palpable in the thick air. But he knew they faced something ancient and terrible. The leader was relentless. It swiped angrily, knocking one of the torches aside, its flames sputtering as it crashed to the ground. The smell of scorched wood pierced through the ensuing chaos, but the muscle queen pressed on, gritting her teeth. "Now!" she yelled, pushing him to the front. "Strike when I say." Without hesitation, he followed her lead, fueled by urgency. Their swords met in a terrifying clash, but the creature guarded itself, swirling around them, sensing their moves. The prince's heart raced, and an icy chill washed over him each time those glowing eyes locked onto him. It was hunting, and he had to fight with everything he had to protect her. The beast sprang forth, launching itself at the muscle queen with vicious intent. She swung hard, but the creature was faster. Its jaws nearly caught her before she evaded its grasp. Shock surged through the prince as he witnessed her narrowly escape. "Don't you dare falter!" he called out, forcing himself into the fray, striking when he could, despite the wounds on his arm pulsing like a living thing. He could feel every ounce of pain, but he pushed it down, refusing to let it cloud his mind. She couldn't fall, they couldn't lose. But then the sky seemed to darken. An unearthly roar echoed again, reverberating through the air like a tolling bell, and a sudden dread washed over the square. The scent of molten dread hung thick around them as they prepared for the next charge. In that moment, the prince felt a sudden shift. As if this battle, steeped in blood and fear, would reveal something more than just victory or death. He paused, his breath hitching. The glowing eyes of the beast weren't just predatory. They held a dark intelligence, a knowledge that twisted inside him like a coiled serpent. A connection he couldn't place sparked in the back of his mind. Was it recognition? A deeper reason this creature targeted them? It sank deep. The sensation sent his heart racing, alongside the fear for the Muscle Queen's life and the uncertain fate that awaited both of them. Focus, the Muscle Queen roared, her voice a battle hymn casting through the darkness. But he was lost in the abyss of questions that rose with urgency. What if this conflict was just a mask, an elaborate scheme concealing something unfathomable? He couldn't shake the feeling that this creature was entwined with their past, with him, and with her dead. As the creature lunged again, fury radiating in its every sinewy muscle, the world around them faded. Time felt suspended. With one last surge, he was ready. He would either strike true or fall on the edge of his destiny. Could the battle reveal the shocking truth hidden right beneath the surface? Would they triumph against the darkness looming over them, or would this moment pierce their hearts forever? The beast roared, a sound so primal it shook the very foundations of the square. The prince's heart thundered in response, his pulse racing like a runaway horse. He and the Muscle Queen fought side by side, their swords singing through the air, their every strike a plea for survival. "Watch the left," she shouted, but before he could react, the creature's tail swung like a whip, crashing down at him. He barely ducked in time, the wind of its passage buffeting him. The ground trembled underfoot as the beast adjusted, its claws seeking fresh prey, glistening with the moonlight. He couldn't afford to glance away. Not now, as he saw the creature reset its attack, focusing its glowing gaze on the Muscle Queen. Panic surged again, a hot wave washing over him. "No!" he shouted, desperation edging his voice. She seemed unfazed, undeterred by the beast's fierce intent. Summoning strength from deep within, he lunged forward, but the Muscle Queen was already weaving an intricate pattern of strikes. It was mesmerizing to watch her glide across the battlefield, muscles coiled and ready. Yet, something in her movements screamed of danger, as if she too could feel the shifting tides of fate. With every clash, the prince felt the weight of the beast's fury. It was relentless, and the crowd around them seemed to shrink in on themselves, paralyzed by fear. He could hear their gasps, their whispers, and the rising murmur of dread. Each time their swords connected, the prince caught fleeting glimpses of desperation in the faces of onlookers. They were counting on him. "What are we even fighting?" He breathed through gritted teeth after parrying a direct blow from the creature's claws. "Fate," she yelled back, her voice a blend of raw energy and fierce determination. "And it's fighting back." As she dodged and struck, something within him flickered. Had he been drawn into something larger than himself? The creature's eyes bore an unsettling familiarity, igniting a nagging sense of recognition that sent chills down his spine. Why did it feel as if a sinister thread was woven between them? "Feel it," she urged, pushing him to block another attack. "Channel that fear. Make it your weapon." He nodded, the fire in his chest igniting. He could not let helplessness consume him. He charged, withdrawing from two powerful strikes, and landed swift blows to the creature's flank. Blood splattered, the dark life essence painting the cobblestones, but the beast roared in fury, unfazed by the pain. But it wasn't just anger that fueled the creature. There was something deeper, an abiding hatred that made his blood run cold. The truth, once again, tightened its grip around his heart. This was more than a battle for survival. They were not just fighting for lives. They were battling shadows of their own pasts in a heartbeat. The creature turned its gaze fiercely upon the Muscle Queen once more, those glowing eyes igniting with dangerous recognition. She had struck something core to its being. Had their fates somehow intertwined long before this night? Resolute, she leaped into the air, a fierce arc of strength that felt like poetry in motion. As she came crashing down, aiming for the creature's head, the prince felt a new surge of desperation, a primal urge to protect her. But as the creature reared back, its mouth opening wide, ready to unleash a wrath that could tear her asunder. Panic spread like wildfire. Was she about to be obliterated before his very eyes? No, he bellowed, thrusting himself forward, fighting every instinct to hold back. Just then, the earth trembled violently. A tremor erupted, fractures spider-webbing through the cobblestones. The creature paused, confusion flickering in its advanced eyes, momentarily distracted. But what came next would change everything. Emerging from the shadows of the square, a figure cloaked in darkness stepped forward, the presence heavy and commanding. "Stop!" it called, the voice echoing through the chaos like a bell tolling the end of days. Could this mysterious figure hold the answers to their entangled destinies? Would they truly reveal the unspeakable truth connecting the prince and the creature? Or would it ignite a new level of chaos they couldn't escape? The crowd gasped, an edge of hope and dread mingling in the chilly night air. The prince's throat tightened, that commanding voice sending a ripple of barely contained tension through the square. Who was this newcomer, and how could they possibly halt a creature born of nightmare and fury? The figure stepped closer, revealing a face half concealed under the shadow of a hood. The prince squinted, desperately seeking any sign of recognition. "Who are you?" he shouted, trying to pierce through the chaos. "What do you want?" "Be still," the figure commanded again, and against all instinct they listened. The creature bared its teeth, confusion flickering across its monstrous visage, as if grappling with the authority of this dark presence. The Muscle Queen landed with cat-like grace, her fierce spirit undeterred but wary. "Do you know this beast?" she asked, her voice steady, but the prince could hear the tremor beneath it. "More than you realize," the figure replied cryptically, stepping further into the light. The moon gleamed off their cloak, revealing intricate symbols the very same that adorned the prince's own armor. Residues of a past he barely understood. "What do you mean?" The prince's heart raced, memories of childhood tales long forgotten flooding his mind. Stories of ancient rulers, bloodlines entwined with beasts, fate circling like a hawk hunting its prey. Just then, the creature snapped its attention, as if sensing vulnerabilities unspoken. It exhaled a soundless growl that reverberated through the square, making the prince's bones rattle. The beast seemed to draw strength from fear itself. "Listen closely," the shadowed figure continued, ignoring the looming danger. "You and this creature share a bond. A lineage. A fate bound by blood." "What?" The prince was incredulous, his pulse racing, trying to process the implications. The Muscle Queen shot him a sideways glance, confusion mirrored in her eyes. "This beast, it is not merely a monster. It is your brother." The words hit him like a knife. His breath caught painfully in his throat as darkness threatened to consume his thoughts. How could that be possible? He opened his mouth to speak but was frozen, the enormity of the claim pinning him in place. The Muscle Queen stepped forward, her voice low and harsh. "You're lying. No beast can share blood with a prince. Bloodlines do not always conform to the world's perceptions," came the reply. "He was cursed, a transformation that led to his monstrosity, but his heart still beats with the same rhythm as yours." Time seemed to halt around them, the crowd observing with bated breath. The creature, still a figure of terror, hesitated, its fierce glowing gaze shifting to the prince, as if searching for recognition behind the flickering shadows of their shared past. The heaviness in the air thickened, uncertainty palpable. The prince felt the icy grip of reality tighten around him. Could the shadowed figure be telling the truth? "Trust me. There is more to uncover," they insisted, their voice imbued with urgency. "But your fates are interwoven. You must face the truths you've avoided for too long." And with that, a cacophonous roar erupted from the creature, a thunderous sound betraying both agony and rage. "You think you can break the curse? You will pay for your arrogance." Suddenly, tendrils of darkness coiled from the figure, swirling like a tempest ready to unleash chaos. The prince's heart raced as the plug of revelation pulled free, drowning him in a flood of questions. Could he really face a brother he'd never known, even if it meant confronting the horrifying past that bred this chaos? "Run!" the Muscle Queen shouted, But this time the prince hesitated, torn between loyalty and blood. Could he abandon an unseen part of himself, or would it lead them both into a deeper void of despair? As the shadows surged, the ground trembled once more, threatening to swallow them whole. The flicker of the past ignited a fire inside him, pushing him to make a choice before darkness claimed the night. What truth would he unearth about this bond? Could he trust the figure, or would it all lead them to shared devastation? The uncertainty gnawed at him as the cries from the crowd swelled, and the beast roared again, more a plea than a threat. The moment hung suspended. What would he decide? The shadows surged like a tide, sweeping over the frightened crowd. The prince felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his chest, a suffocating mix of confusion and dread. He glanced around, catching fleeting glimpses of horrified faces. The muscle queen's eyes flared with determination, yet her jaw tightened, betraying her fear. "Make your choice," the shadowed figure commanded, voice like thunder in the chaos. The creature's growl rumbled again, echoing with an unsettling mix of pain and fury. The prince's heart raced. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about a brother, a being he had never known, a part of him that lived in shadow and torment. "Tell me what to do," he shouted, fighting through uncertainty. Desperation coiled around his throat, constricting his voice as something deep within him stirred. Was it courage, or was it madness? Embrace the truth. The figure stepped farther into the light, revealing more of their face. It was a visage both fearsome and beautiful, a blend of wisdom and darkness entwined. Only by acknowledging your bond can either of you find healing. The creature's attention locked onto the prince, its gaze piercing yet almost pleading. In that moment, time shattered, fragments of his past swirling like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Memories flickered. A childhood home, whispers of forbidden stories and laughter that seemed to call from beyond. "Can I trust you?" The words were barely a whisper, but they felt thunderous against the backdrop of chaos. The muscle queen encroached, stepping protectively between him and the creature. "Don't be a fool. This may be a trap. Do not turn away from family," the shadowed figure insisted, their voice sharp and unwavering. "The curse is a bond. Yes, but it is also a chain binding you both to pain." With a breath that felt like a storm inside him, the prince focused on the creature. Behind the monstrous exterior, he saw vulnerability, a yearning for acceptance, a desperate fight against a darkness enveloping them both. "I'll try," he stammered, the words falling from his lips like stones. "I'll try to reach you." The creature paused. For a heartbeat, silence draped over them like a fine mist. Then, in a sudden burst, it surged forward, crashing through the remnants of the moment, drawing the prince to its side. The crowd screamed and backed away, eyes wide in terror. "No!" shouted the muscle queen, darting toward them, her instincts kicking into high gear. "Get away from it." But instead of horror, the prince felt a strange warmth grow from the contact. A pulse, a flicker, a surge of ancient energy thumping through their connection. He saw visions of the creature's memories, darkness overwhelming, moments of searing pain, loneliness seeping into every corner of its existence. "Brother." The word felt foreign, the weight of it heavy on his tongue, but he uttered it anyway. The creature froze, its snarling expression softening, eyes shining with unshed tears. The relief was tangible, but it was abruptly shattered. Shadow tendrils from the figure leaped forward, crashing toward them like a storm breaking loose. "No!" the prince cried, forcing himself against the pull of overwhelming dread. "This can't end in chaos. I will understand. Together we will break these bonds." In that moment, a rift split the air around them, revealing swirling colors of past and future mingling dangerously. The figure shrieked, furious and relentless, but the prince held firm, channeling every ounce of his will. "Stay together," he roared, reaching for the creature's claw. "Together we can face whatever this is." The ground trembled as energies collided, and the crowd watched, breathless but spellbound, as the line blurred between ally and enemy, blood and beast. But as the howls of the figure crescendoed, A darkness descended from the rift, a force more powerful than fear itself. In that heartbeat, uncertainty spiraled. Would they discover the strength to confront their intertwined fate, or would the shadows consume them both? The answer slipped away as the darkness surged once more, swallowing the square whole. What had he unleashed, and could he withstand the truth that awaited him beneath the veil? The air trembled, thick with electric tension as the claw of the beast brushed against the princess' hand. Their bond, forged in shadows and pain, ignited a spark of understanding that surged through them both. The Muscle Queen stood firm beside him, eyes blazing with fierce determination. The crowd remained frozen in a blend of fear and awe, breath held as they witnessed the most unimaginable. The prince could feel the pulse of something primal, a truth nestled deep within the marrow of his bones, and it coursed with urgency, urging him not to yield to despair. "Listen to me," he bellowed, grounding himself against the chaos. "We face our past not as foes, but as family bound by fate." The massive creature paused before him, its glowing eyes softening from menace to a vulnerability that made the prince's heart ache. Memories flooded his mind, sudden glimmers of a child's laughter, a long-lost connection, and folded whispers that spoke of a forbidden union. He took a shaky breath, conviction solidifying within him. "I am not afraid of you." Those words hung like a shield against the encroaching darkness. The ground beneath writhed with fear, but together, they pushed back, bound by a knowledge too potent to let slip away. "No!" The dark figure erupted, tendrils swirling ferociously in retaliation, but the prince refused to falter. "You are not my master. I choose my destiny." At that moment, the Muscle Queen stepped forward, her presence like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. "This is our choice. You will not control us," she declared, the weight of her muscles and spirit resonating through the square. The creature beside the prince shifted, tremors of recognition radiating through its massive frame. How could such a relentless terror harbor a heart longing for acceptance? With every heartbeat, the connection between the prince and the beast deepened, an uncharted territory of hope unfolding. "Let us fight for what unites us," the prince shouted, determination firing in his veins. Together, they could face this darkness, unravel the curse looming over their lives, a curse forged in hatred but now could be transformed by love. The dark figure recoiled, its fury tangible, but the strength between the prince, the Muscle Queen, and the creature grew, a united front against the storm. The swirling tendrils hesitated, sensing the shift, and for an instant, the clamor of the square faded into silence. "Now!" the prince cried, an electric sense of possibility igniting within him. Together, with a powerful roar, they charged. The beast surged forward alongside the prince, muscles coiling with raw energy. The Muscle Queen swept behind them, a whirlwind of fortitude, brandishing her weapon like a beacon of hope. As they collided with the shadows, a blinding light cascaded around them, bathing the square in an unfathomable glow. The dark figure screamed, its voice a chorus of anguish as the united forces crashed against the swirling chaos, illuminating forgotten truths buried beneath layers of pain. Shadows recoiled, attempting to flee from the burgeoning light. Light enveloped them, and as they battled onward, every swing felt like they were cutting through centuries of darkness. It was visceral and real, their shared energy merging and igniting with every strike, binding together the pieces of their fractured destinies. Their raw will forged a barrier that birthed clarity, scattering the darkness like dust in the wind as the last tendril of shadow dissolved beneath their combined essence. A sudden hush fell across the square. Not a single breath was drawn, the crowd captivated by the spectacle of unity. "Brother," the prince whispered, gazing into the newly revealed being before him. The creature looked down, eyes now free of rage and confusion. There was sorrow, yes, but also a flicker of peace. "I am here," it murmured, voice deep and resonant, without the growl. "We shall find our way through together." A wave of understanding flooded the prince's heart, not just for himself, but for the kingdom. Their past intertwined like roots beneath the soil, binding them together in a tangled fate that now stood on the brink of reformation. Behind them, The Muscle Queen sheathed her sword and stepped forward, embracing both the prince and his brother. We are stronger together not just as warriors but as family. In that moment, the weight of fear began to lift, making room for hope to blossom like the first bloom of spring. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, cries of jubilation washing away the remnants of terror. The prince stood firm, hand clasped tightly around the Muscle Queen's, and matched by his brother. Our story has just begun, he declared, his heart bursting with the possibilities that lay ahead. Together, we will create a legacy of strength, healing, and protection. And so, under the watchful gaze of the now vanquished blood moon, they turned to the townsfolk, faces aglow in the new light, ready to rebuild the kingdom not just from fragments but with resolute hearts unified in purpose as one. They stepped forward into a new dawn, the truth lighting their way as they embraced the journey ahead. Now, this is your moment to be part of something amazing. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that are just around the corner. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find these thrilling tales. I want to see you flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this electrifying ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support because only true fans understand the importance of getting involved. This chapter may be closed, but the adventure continues. Let's embark on it together.